Good morning. This is March 15, and though the picture behind me is not the way it looks at the church, it's certainly a wintertime picture. Um, I'll start with some announcements here. Tonight, we are going to host the Elkton Lenten series. It's been revolving to different churches, and we will be hosting tonight, 5 o'clock. It starts with soup and sandwiches and then goes into worship time. And the next week will include Mount Paran Baptist Church. Yeah. Okay. Well, here are some other announcements. Easter morning, for everyone to know, is April 5. That's a little bit earlier than normal, but that's our time. We will be gathering with a Easter breakfast, and you're welcome to come and meet us, and we'd love to have you. 10 o'clock. Our next bluegrass concert, and this is important to note, will not be Easter evening. That's just too much for our gals to prepare food. So it will be the following week, so April 12th. That's unusual. Usually it's our first Sunday, but keep that in mind. And I think that's it for the public announcements, but we did want you to know those things. Yeah. One verse of a song. Precious Lord, take my hand, let me on, help me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I'm worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. Important words, an important prayer, because sometimes living in this dissonance that we do, it's just hard to take. I say dissonance because that is our overarching Lenten theme. You know, we know what is promised us, but we live in a world that makes things seem so hard. And so we live in that dissonance. Dissonance, actually, in a musical term, would mean that there's a chord and another chord that don't fit together, and we can tell right away that something's not right. It's dissonance, and we live in that kind of place. We live and dwell in that. Um, you know, the death of Lazarus was such a thing for us. Um, we saw Mary and Martha just saying, "If you'd only been here, Lord." And their concept of the power of Jesus needed to be broadened because they believed. They believed that he was the Messiah. They believed that he would have his will before God. But they needed to understand the breadth and the depth of his power. Jesus' last teaching to us was about hmm, humility and service. Well, that's interesting that that was the last thing he taught us. It wasn't about stand forward and fight for the kingdom. It's humility and service. That's what our hearts need. That's what our egos need. That lesson is so essential. And yet, it puts us in dissonance with the world. The culture we live in is nothing like that. And last week we spoke of what we imagined, what we prayed for, and how those were often just not the way it turned out. Hard lessons. Today, our reading is from John 18, beginning at the 28th verse. Then they took Jesus from Caiaphas to Pilate's headquarters. It was early in the morning. They themselves did not enter the headquarters as to avoid ritual defilement and to be able to eat Passover. Now, I'll just interject that this is the second installment then of um, Jesus' trial uh, before crucifixion. Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered, "If this man were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him according to your law." The Jews replied, "We are not permitted to put anyone to death." And this was to fulfill how Jesus would die, because death at the hands of the Romans was through crucifixion. Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own account, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" And Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews." Pilate asked, "So you are a king?" And Jesus answered, "You say that I'm a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Pilate asked him, "What is truth?" You can tell that Pilate himself was full of the dissonance of this world. Um, he asks, "What is truth?" A sad, sad, sardonic question to ask. Uh, he has no hope that the truth prevails in this life, and yet he is a ruler. And later he'll say, "I find no cause for this man to die." And yet, and he says that on several occasions, and yet he turns Jesus over to be crucified. Powerlessness. And yet he had all the power of Rome behind him. That's dissonance for you. Not even able to use the power you think you have. And I think that that's what we all find out when we use military force, let's say, to quell an enemy, and find that it only causes bitterness and hatred that will last generations, well beyond today and this year. We live in the trouble of the world, and nothing seems to fit right. We know what justice looks like, we can imagine it, and yet we don't see it. That's where we find ourselves living in this world, and yet we still put all our hope in the ways of this world, of military might, of capital punishment, of the things that this world tells us will fix everything. It and they won't. And yet, there we are, going forward with such ideas. How's that possible? How is it that our logic doesn't take over? And it's largely because we are captives of Satan, captives of this world, captives of a thinking that is flawed and can never lead to goodness. May we reach out to Jesus, find him, and then follow him forward. Last things he was teaching was service and humility. Quite antithetical to what we see in today's scripture. May you be blessed as you reach out to Christ and look for the blessing of the Lord and not the acclamation of the crowd. This world will only lead us to evil. May you be blessed as you walk forward today. Bye bye. We'll see you next week.